We are live.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting, Truth and Taxation hearing on December 6, 2020 at 6 p.m. We are being held remotely. Pardon me. Subject to the requirements of Section 206, which includes keeping minutes and allowing public participation, but notwithstanding any provision of law, an open or closed meeting subject to the act may be conducted by audio or video conference without physical presence of a quorum of members, so long as the following conditions are met. As the board president, I have determined that tonight's board meeting will be held remotely due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic. The governor has issued a disaster declaration related to public health concerns because of the disaster as defined in Section 4 of the Illinois Emergency Management Act. An in-person meeting is not practical or prudent this evening because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have confirmed that all board members participating in the meeting this evening can hear one another and can hear all discussions during the meeting. We have arranged for members of the public to be contemporaneously hear all discussions during tonight's meeting through the website and the Google meeting. I, Jim Weedman, board president, is present at the Grays Lake Middle School in the library of our which is the place of our regular board meeting. All votes taken this evening will be taken by roll call. As required by the Open Meetings Act, a verbatim recording of tonight's open session meeting will be kept and made available to the public on the district website. There is a Google Doc on the district website and for public comments for them to be read to the board. And with that being all said, have a call to order and a roll call, please.
Weedman?
Here.
Mack?
Here.
Braden? Here. LaCroix?
Here.
Miller?
Here.
Nash?
Here.
And Strack.
How's it going?
How you doing, sir?
Sorry about that. I wasn't here tonight. I thought that someone covered for me to get you in, but I just wanted to pop in.
No worries. I got in.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Strack? Is he here? No? Okay.
Okay, that gives us a quorum. Next, I need approval of taxation hearing agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
Braden? Aye. LaCroix?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
Okay, next up is the 2020 tax levy presentation.
So before you begin, Jane, I'm sorry.
Okay.
One moment before you begin, I just want to clarify, we will have public comment specifically about the tax levy after the tax levy. And I wanted to know if the public comment form is already open for people to submit questions or not.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to introduce Jane Laird-McGowan. She is one of our interim CSBOs, and she will be presenting the tax levy.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to be very, very brief as the hearing is really the opportunity for public comments and questions. So I don't want to take up any of their time. So briefly, if Mr. Vipon could put up one slide for us. Thank you, sir. I just want to review the 2020 levy, which is what you will be asked to approve during the regular meeting. You'll be approving the aggregate total which is kind of down in the middle of the page there, the 30,181,646. That is sometimes referred to as the capped levy or your operating fund levy, because we do not levy for the debt service, the $7.6 million. So your certificate of levy will be the 30.1 million. And as you can see, in 2019 extensions, which are the amount of taxes we received from the 2019 levy, was just over 29.3 million. So the 2020 levy represents almost a 3% increase over last year's extensions. The debt service fund, there is very little change, a slight decrease. So overall, the 2020 levy to include debt service is just a little over 2% increase over the 2019 extensions. With that, we're going to open it up to public comments and questions for their opportunity to speak.
Okay.
This time, I do not have any public comments in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Does the board have any members of the board have any comments or questions on the tax levy?
I do not.
Well, in that event, shall we give
Okay.
it just a few minutes? Oh, Tamika had a question, is that right?
Oh, no, I was confirming that I did not. I think Jane did a really nice job at the last meeting, so I feel really good. Thanks.
I'm just wondering, because we're in this unusual situation, right, with a remote meeting, perhaps we can just, wait a moment or two, give it a minute to see if anybody is going to input any questions.
Yep.
Because we obviously want to give our community an opportunity to ask questions. So
I can review the process, the timeline for just a moment.
that'd be great. Why don't you do that?
Okay, so of course, what I said during the regular meeting, the board is asked to approve the 2020 tax levy. There will be some resolutions involved with that. We are required to approve what they call special taxes. So there'll be a resolution for the working cash fund, which you levy for every year, the tort fund, which you do levy every year, and also the CDAL IMRF. And what is interesting about that is, as a member of CDAL, which is the Special Education District of Lake County, all member districts levy a portion of the IMRF pension, which is for non-certified staff, as our portion for those staff at CDAL. So that's what that rather small amount is. Each district in the member CDAL membership levies something on that levy, and it is proportioned out according to the size of the district. Once the board approves the 2020 levy this evening, I have a plethora of documents to sign. And once that's done, then I will file all the tax levy documents with the Lake County Clerk no later than the first or the last Tuesday of December. And then we're taken care of for this next year.
Okay. Chris, how are we on comments? Still 0 or?
I just refreshed it and no comments at this time.
Okay.
Jane, this is Tamika. To give our community members a little bit more time as
Sure.
well, can you just speak to the debt service reduction? So I believe that was a part of our restructuring of some debt a little while ago. Can you expand on that?
Actually, it is not.
It's not,
Those
okay.
are the debt certificates which you just kind of refinanced a couple of months ago are
Right.
not a part of this debt service.
Oh, okay.
Those certificates you pay out of operating funds. So your operation and maintenance levy, that 3.5 million, those payments effectively come out of those dollars.
Gotcha.
Okay. This debt service, the a little over 7 million here, is for long-term debt. And those are bond issues which have been issued in previous years. The district currently has 5 outstanding bond issues. So these are payments to meet those amortization schedules for your principal and interest payments for this next fiscal year, starting July 1, 2021. So the county clerk, you don't levy for it. The county clerk will automatically extend those taxes to meet those very specific principal and interest payments over the next fiscal year.
A little background for you, Tamika. We did reissue those bonds probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less, so that we could level out the payments.
Mhm.
We were at about 6.2 million, I believe, a year, and they were scheduled to ramp up to about 10.2 million, probably by this year, if not next year.
Mhm.
So what we did is we worked with our agent, and we reissued them with a more of a flat rate. So that's why you haven't seen that rate move very much.
Okay.
And then in the long run, we saved the taxpayers about $3.5 million, I believe the figure was, by doing that. So that number is more flat now and more easy to manage.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thanks for that additional context, Jim.
Welcome.
Yep. Thanks, Jane.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any other questions for Jane?
Excuse me.
We'll continue to leave the room open in case anybody submits any comments here for a little bit longer. We'll give it to about 6:15 if everybody's okay with that. Okay, Chris, one more time. Do you have any public comments?
Mr. Reedman, I just refreshed and there are no comments at this time.
Okay. Well, if it's all right with everybody, we will convene this meeting, if that's good with the rest of the board. I think we gave ample time for somebody to make a comment. So I look for a motion to adjourn the truth and taxation hearing.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Was that Mac or Nash?
Nash, I'm sorry, Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.
Okay. That concludes the truth and taxation hearing. We will reconvene in about 14 minutes or so for the regular board meeting. I assume the recording stops and then we'll start it back up, correct?
We're back.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting held December 16th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. We are currently holding this meeting remotely. Subject to the requirements of Section 206, which includes keeping minutes and allowing public participation, but notwithstanding any other provision of law, an open or closed meeting subject to the act may be conducted by audio or video conference without the physical presence of a quorum of the members, so long as the following conditions are met. The governor's COVID-19 disaster declaration remains in full force and effect. An in-person meeting is not practical or prudent this evening because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have confirmed that all board members are participating in the meeting this evening can hear one another and can hear all discussions during the meeting. We have arranged for members of the public to contemporaneously hear all discussions during tonight's meeting through the web based on our website. The board president, Jim Weedman, which is myself, is present at GMS in the library, which is our regular location meeting. All votes taken this evening will be taken by a roll call vote. As required by the Open Meeting Act, a verbatim recording of tonight's open session meeting will be kept and made available to the public on the district website. And there's also an acceptable form of way for public comments for this board meeting, and that is through the Google Docs link on the district website. So with that being all said, I need a roll call or a call to order.
Weedman,
Here.
Mack,
Here.
Braden,
Here.
LaCroy,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Nash,
Present.
Strack.
All right, that gives us our quorum. Next, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay. Next is public comments. The public comment document it should be open right now. We will hold off on reading any public comments until the end of the board meeting and the second space for public comments. So up next is the 2020 audit by Sheridan Jurgensen, partner at Elder, Casella and Company. Hopefully I said that right.
You got it. Good evening. Yeah, my name is Sheridan Jurgensen. I'm one of the partners at Elder, Casella and Company. I just wanted to spend a few minutes and go over the results of the audit and then answer any questions you might have. So just to start off, I just want to say thank you to Jane and Mary and Marco for just their help in getting the audit done. As you can imagine, the audit this year with COVID is just very difficult. There's just a lot of back and forth over email, which is always easier in person. So we were still able to get it done by the deadline, which is great. So we just really appreciate their help and patience in getting us what we need to finish. So I just wanted to walk through a few things in the audit report. The first thing in the audit report, the first page, is our audit opinion. And it's an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can have under accounting standards. And really it's just saying that all the testing we did, everything that we looked at, that we felt the financial statements were reasonably stated and free from material misstatement. And one of the things in there, it talks about internal control. And while we don't give an opinion on internal control, we spend a lot of time looking at it. If there was to be any fraud or any errors that occurred during any of the accounting processes, it's going to be your internal controls that catch that. And so it's really important that you not only have written policies and procedures in place, but they're also being followed. So we also actually watch the people as they process payroll and cash disbursements and cash receipts, and making sure that those policies and procedures are being followed. We had no issues or any findings as a result of the internal control. So that was good news. Then in the audit report, after the opinion, the first section is the management discussion and analysis. And I would recommend, if you don't read anything else in the audit report, that you read that section. It's just a good narrative of what happened during the year, some variances, and just kind of a more user-friendly, easier to read section. Unless you want to read the whole audit report, which is great as well, but I know it's not the most exciting document in the world. Then after that, we actually have two sets of financial statements. The first set, I don't really spend any time on. It's a more long outlook statement. So it shows your fixed assets, long-term debt, pension liability, OPEB liabilities, a lot of things that you probably aren't too concerned with on a day-to-day basis. So the second set of financials in there, which start on page 15, are your fund financial statements. And that shows the financial results by fund, which I think is a little more used to what you're seeing on a monthly basis. So the first thing that we look at on page 15 is your cash and kind of what you have on hand at the end of the year for your cash reserves. We always recommend the districts have at least 3 months of reserves. When you start to get up to 18 to 20 months of reserves, that's when you can start to get tax objections. So we just looked at your operating funds, and they're all between 4 to, it looks like 12 months approximately. So they're all in that range. So those were all good. So nothing to be concerned of there. And then on page 18, well, actually 17 and 18, that shows the revenues and expenses for the year. You can see for the end of the year, there was a net loss of $587,000. You can see that's primarily from the general fund, which is your ed fund, as well as operations and maintenance. Those both had around about $650,000 lost and offset by the transportation fund, which had about $500,000 net income for the year. Then the rest of the audit report is your notes to the financial statements. So your accounting policies, any details on your long-term debt, fixed assets, pension liabilities, etc. Just a lot more detail, as well as your single audit. We actually have to do a separate audit on your grants that you get from the federal government. And so that's a lot of compliance testing, making sure that you're in compliance with the grant requirements, and had no issues with that, no findings related to the single audit, which is great. So that's the audit report. The other thing that we issue is the AFR, which goes to ISBE. And on there, they calculate your financial profile. And this year you are at a 3.6, or yeah, 3.6. It's on a range of 0 to 4. So you're in a, I believe you're still in the recognition category for that. So that's great. And then the other thing that we issue as part of the report is a management letter. And those are just our recommendations, or just information to the board to, just kind of give you the results of the audit. And so we had 2 comments in there this year. I actually think they're similar to last year. The first one is more information, but just to let you know that there were material entries that we had to make as part of the audit. It's not unusual. The district stays on a cash basis of accounting the entire year. And so there's just journal entries that have to be made to bring it to accrual, which is what you are required to have for your audit report. So there was entries made for those, as well as some accrued liabilities, which kind of flows into the next comment. There were several liabilities, and it's been a couple-year issue that there's just liabilities that somehow the software is posting into those accounts and just not clearing themselves out. And so we went ahead and worked with Jane to figure out what those balances should be, and adjusted those out, or adjusted them to the correct balances. But then we also just made the recommendation to look into that, figure out, it may be a software issue that you need to work with Skyward on to determine what exactly is going in and out of those accounts to be able to address that going forward. So that is just a quick overview of the audit. I will open it up for any questions or any comments you have.
Does anybody have any questions for her?
I have a couple of questions, if that's all right. I was curious about, you said that some of the material issues were multi-year issues, and it looks like they've been corrected. Jane, thank you for the memo that you sent with us. or to us. I'm wondering if you expect those to be rectified then by next year. And I'm also wondering for how many years have those been a problem? Just 2, or I know it was last year, it indicated in 2018 we had the same issue, but I didn't know if it had been rectified. Or if it was before that.
I can't speak to how many years back ago. Sheridan might be able to respond to that, but I can tell you we don't expect this to be a finding going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and to answer your other question, I believe it has been 2, maybe 3 years at the most.
Okay. Fantastic. Is there a cost savings for the district as a result of catching this? I know the business office has worked really hard to create efficiencies. Will we see savings for that?
No, this is simply entries that we as a district should have made rather than having the auditor tell us to make those entries. So we review these kinds of accruals on a monthly basis now. And when something needs to be adjusted, we need to make that adjustment. And as far as the comment regarding Skyward, we did have Skyward come in and do a thorough analysis of our payroll system and how it was set up to see if some accruals were being posted incorrectly. And Skyward is set up correctly, posting things as it should. So this is something that we in the business office need to take care of and take a look at on a regular basis.
Okay. All right. And it sounds like you've got plans for that. And so we won't see it moving forward then.
No, we're taking care of that as we speak, because we're already halfway through this fiscal year. So we've already made great strides in the current fiscal year's accounting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Last question is just, I know that our financial profile is a 3.6 out of 4, and that we have perfect scores and high scores in all but one category. And the one category is the debt, and that's a 1 out of 4. Can you speak to that and just help us understand why a 1 when everything else is so high?
If you recall, during the levy hearing, I talk about your debt payments, the $7.6 million. By Illinois law, as an elementary district, you can issue debt up to 6.9% of your equalized assessed valuation. So for 2019, that EAV number is over $714 million, which means you could have debt of $49.2 million. You actually have $43.6 million of outstanding debt. So you've used up 88% of your available debt, thus the score of 1. So the more available debt you have available to the district, the higher that score is going to be on that one portion of the financial profile.
So as we pay that debt off, then we'll see that score rise.
And as your EAV rises as well, both things will go together.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jane. Okay. And thank you, Sheridan.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Sheridan for going through this in detail. I don't have any other questions. I think, Jane, you just spoke to, and I just want to confirm. The only question that I heard was if the issue was escalated to Skyward, our vendor, and it sounds like we've already tested that and ruled that out. So I'm good. Correct. Thank you. All right.
Christy, Breen, any comments, questions?
No, I appreciate the very clear translation of some complex stuff into English major language, which is exactly what I need. So much appreciated. Thank you. And great questions, Christy. Those were helpful too.
Jason LaCroix?
No, I don't have any questions. Seems pretty typical. I mean, I've been through a lot of audits on the corporate side, and there's just never an audit that comes back without any findings whatsoever. So it sounds like the things that need to be addressed are being addressed, and I'm comfortable.
Okay. Dr. Mack?
I am fine too. I appreciate the explanations for somebody that needs it as well. So I appreciate all the work being done.
Okay. I think that covers everybody. All right. Thank you very much. So next on our agenda is the mid-year report on energy savings from Performance Services.
Hi, good evening. This is Brian Ondiak. I'm the general manager with Performance Services. And I'm going to share. Am I sharing my own screen, or is it already teed up?
I've got it and can present
There
it.
we go. Okay. Great. So Performance Services, we're a engineering construction company. We specialize in public school projects, specifically energy savings projects. So not only solar, but also HVAC, building controls, lighting, etc. So we had a very special and exciting project with District 46. And I've been coordinating with Mary this year to wrap up some items to ensure the district received its various incentives with the project, and then more recently with Adam to make sure he was up to speed on the system, and he's got his eyes all over it. So I think that'll be very beneficial for the district long term. So I just wanted to provide a brief update, and I understand you received the memo that I had sent the district. So this is summarizing the memo, and I can answer any questions you might have. So next slide. This is just a brief overview of the 4 projects. It included 4 solar systems, ground mount systems at Frederick and Prairie View, and roof mount systems at the middle school and Park. Pretty good sized systems overall. So jumping right to it, now this is over a period from July 2019 through June 2020. Now I think we're calling this a mid-year report because technically per the terms of our contract and guarantee, which the guarantee was executed, I believe the middle of this year, our first formal report will be delivered in August of next year, and that'll cover July of 2020 through June of 2021. So in any event, because the system had been operating for at least a year, we thought it was appropriate to share these results. So what is displayed here is how the systems have performed over this time period relative to the prediction. Now, the prediction is based on a computer simulation that incorporates historical weather data. It incorporates the characteristics of the project itself related to the solar panels, the wattage of those panels, the tilt of those panels and the orientation, etc. So the results, as you can see, per building and then across the board in total, about 90% of predicted. And this meets expectations, especially as I share some of the weather data that corresponded with this timeline. One natural question would be, well, how is Grayslake Middle School 100% and the other ones are not? And the middle school was a very, easily the most interesting and challenging project of the 4, given the roof at the middle school. And the reason it's at 100% is because after construction, in order to receive what's called net metering from ComEd, they had changed the protocols by which that is obtained such that we had to limit the output of the system to some extent, not significantly, but to some extent, in order to meet their threshold. So essentially, ComEd says if you have a solar project that is expected to generate way beyond what your building consumes, then you're not eligible for net metering. The limit is 110% of the building. So, and net metering is important because it is value that the district receives for any energy that it exports back to the grid. And also there's a big rebate associated with having the system beyond net metering to the tune of $200,000 for the middle school. So that is the reason why both the predicted number, just the predicted number at the middle school was adjusted downward to reflect that net metering requirement. And then the system did hit that target for the school. So Prairie View, Park, and Frederick performed well. Based on what we've observed from the system, it is producing and is performing as expected. So Park is slightly lower than the others. And this will be something that's part of this full report we provide next year, where we dig into some of the maintenance components that are observed over the year. to help provide additional context on the performance. Next slide. So just to provide some context on the weather that was experienced over the same time period, I think this is really helpful for boards to see as they consider the performance of their systems. Interestingly, over the 37-year average for this area, we experience on average around 85 clear days, which is just under a quarter of the year. I don't know if that's depressing or not, but even more depressing, I suppose, is the actual was about almost half of what is typical. So fairly poor weather year, relatively speaking, but it provides additional context. And your system's performing around 90% on average, or 80% for some of those, for the systems outside of middle school, is a fair performance given the weather condition. Next slide. So this is a table showing the energy savings over this time period. And of course, the predicted is essentially based on the predicted performance, which is heavily weather dependent. So this is the realized calculated savings. And just a note here on the performance of the system and our assessment of it is that it is performing as expected. And deviations are primarily due to varying weather conditions. So overall, we're very satisfied with how the system has been performing and the savings it's generated. So this is fun. Just to summarize some of the revenue of the project, there was a massive rebate associated with it from ComEd that was received in January, February of this year, just under $589,000. And then really excited that the district received its first check associated with the sale of RECs. REC stands for Renewable Energy Certificates. So a big part of this project was securing this contract to sell the renewable energy credits generated by the system and obtain extra revenue from that. So the first check was received in October, $472,000, and I believe Mary had invoiced ComEd again in early December. I think that's around $100,000 or so. So the total REC contract it was around $2 million, and so you have about $1.5 million remaining to be invoiced. So the sum of all of these numbers, the energy savings, the rebate, and the first REC check is just under $1.3 million. So. And then just some comments on what's next. So again, as I explained, this is appropriate because the systems have been operating, so it's to share the results of how it's performed over the prior year. But with our guarantee in place on the performance monitoring the system, you can expect our first formal report to be delivered in August of next year, and that would cover from July of this year through June of 2021. It'll share a lot more detail on the performance, showing kind of the monthly breakdown. And it's interesting to see that there's quite a bit of variance from month to month, you'll observe. The solar can drive you crazy if you pay attention to it too frequently. There'll also be an energy savings breakdown, more detail on the REC revenue, and then system performance measurements as well. That is what I had to share tonight. Are there any questions that I could answer for the board?
Hi, Brian. This is Jason LaCroix, board member. The fact that we hit 100% at GMS, despite the poor weather conditions, does that imply that we overbuilt at GMS, given the net metering requirements? Are there more panels there than we need than we can actually use because of the metering agreement?
That's a fair question. The system was originally designed for, I want to say 115% or so of that building. And ComEd's net metering rules came into effect during the construction of the project. And essentially that cap was at 110%. So I think it is fair to say that had we known the ComEd rules prior to the project being implemented, we would have backed off slightly. But I think it's still beneficial long-term for the district because these systems do degrade slightly over time. Roughly industry standard is to expect around 0.5% per year. So even further down the line, you'll have a system that is producing a significant offset for that middle school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Brian, thank you so much. Just for this report, it's great to know that we're saving the taxpayers some money, and I appreciate that, and also reducing our carbon footprint. I have a question, just thinking long term, what happens when the solar panels are completely dysfunctional or not functioning? I understand solar panel life cycle is usually about 20 years, and then what do we do with the solar panels after that?
Yeah, we say probably closer to 30 years. Panels that were installed in the 70s are still producing. They're just at a much lower level than what they were originally. So I think what's really nice and special about this project is that you'll have all the infrastructure in place. So when there comes a point 20 plus years down the line that perhaps the technology is to the point where it actually does make sense to replace the modules, then you'll have the racking in place, you'll have the electrical wiring already in place. And so it can be an easier project in terms of swapping out those modules. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, great. I just want to make sure they're not going in the dumpster. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Brian, I do have I have a question that goes along the lines with the GMS and the 100% part.
Yeah.
If we had had a normal weather pattern like you outlined in your presentation, would you have expected that number to be over 100% then?
No, actually, because we are supposed to be capped at that number in order to maintain net metering. So while the system, without any curtailment, it would have produced more with better weather, but we are unfortunately limited based on these ComEd rules, which again, unfortunately weren't in place at the initiation of the project.
Do you foresee in the future any chance that those numbers would be adjusted up or down again?
In terms of what is allowable by ComEd?
Yep.
I'm not really sure, but I would suspect not. One of the interesting things that's occurred related to solar and pandemic is that there's been, the buildings have been utilized so much less that these systems are going to be exporting more energy. And so, for projects that are just being developed and installed, they're in a much more difficult spot because ComEd might limit them even further based on this outlier year. But I don't suspect the GMS limit of around 845,000 kilowatt hours to deviate.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Hi, Mr. Weidman. I'd like to just confirm something with Brian. So Brian, thanks so much for the comprehensive overview. It's appreciated. If I think back to your first slide, I feel like I saw a number of 2,300 and some trailing number of kilowatt savings. Is that is equal to the roughly $3 million in savings that we're seeing? Is that an accurate statement?
Not exactly. The 2,300 and so number, that is the size of the system
Okay.
in kilowatts, or you could say it's 2.3 megawatts. So that is the maximum power output of the system.
Okay. Okay. And then thank you for that. And then short of, so, this is the time of the year where everyone's getting performance evaluations done typically, right? And so when I hear you say the system's performing as expected, one of my natural thoughts is, well, will we get it better than expected? So short of Mother Nature smiling down on us, is there anything else that us as a district need to be thinking through to get to better than expected?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So these systems do involve some level of maintenance and mostly monitoring. So we had a really productive meeting with Adam a few months ago where we were able to train him on the monitoring system and portal. And Adam had already had background and experience with solar, so that was really helpful as well. So I think it's just important for the district to continue to maintain and monitor the system, and we're monitoring as well from a performance standpoint. But certainly, if portions of the system are down related to equipment issues, then the system would not be performing as well as it could be.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Dr. Mack?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Dr. Mack, did you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. Sorry, Christy, go ahead. Christy Miller.
Thanks, Jim. Brian, I understand that you're telling us how the system is performing. Is part of your annual report, will that tell us how much energy each building is actually consuming? Not just the performance of the system, but what's the impact on energy consumption per building? Will that be part of your report?
We provide the usage of the buildings before and after, so you will be able to see that detail.
Okay. Thank you.
Christy Braden.
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for the great presentation. Appreciate it.
Jason LaCroix, did you have anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brian, for the presentation. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night. Next will be board reports. Does anybody have any board reports?
I just have one thing to follow up on an email that I sent earlier today, which is we were asked by another school district to provide feedback on the search firm that we used when we found our own Dr. Glickman. So if you were part of that process, I don't want to just speak for myself. I'd love to and I know it feels like 10 million years ago. Had a few things happen since then. I've gotten a couple folks' response already, so thank you for that. But if you have, 30 seconds to just jot down what you felt were their strengths and, any potential areas for concern from that process, I will aggregate all of that and make sure that school district gets some good constructive feedback. So just check your email. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the lead on that.
Mr. Weedman, I'd just like to share for our board members, if you haven't had a chance to see yet, I did forward out a link to the Opening Meetings Act Gray Areas and Pandemic Rules webinar attended in November. And so for any board members or Dr. Glickman, if there's any questions following the review, just let me know. Happy to get into a deeper dive if warranted. As a compliance professional, though, I just want to give a huge shout out that we are living into all of our governing regulatory requirements as such to maintain compliance during this remote period and aligning to the pandemic rules that are out there and the press policies that are out there. So I know it's been no small feat to move our institutional sessions from traditionally physical and in person to remote, but just kudos in terms of knowing that we are in compliance and based on how we've mapped things out for the future going forward, we will continue to do so. So nice job, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tamika. So I have a few things from the Lake County Board. First is that the climate action plan that they have instituted is set to reduce emissions by 50% and is in alignment with the Paris Accord. So that's happy news, especially given our investment in solar panels. And they've also invested in solar panels. So that's fantastic. Another thing that was worth noting, I thought, is that CLC has a partnership with the county now, and students will be preparing meals and snacks and catering at Braylock, which is where Foundation 46 has occasionally hosted events. So that's exciting for any of our students that end up at CLC. And additionally, they have several flood control projects that include flooding around Herian Farms, which is nice. And then finally, they plan to expand Rollins Savannah by 2.7 acres, and that adds to the over 30,000 acres of forest preserve land. Some of that work will be on the Millennium Trail, which is exciting news for us. We've spent quite a bit of investment and money and attention on the trail system in our area. And that leads to the hats off that I have for teachers at Frederick. I'm not sure who did it. Maybe Dr. Glickman, I don't know if you can help me or Paul, but someone put signs up along the paths in Central Park about a book. I think it's Long Walk to Water, which I thought was fantastic to get our kids outside and off screens. While that's certainly necessary, it was nice to see that kids had a reason to do schoolwork outside. So that's my report.
Okay, anybody else?
I was just going to share that what Mrs. Miller just shared, the Long Walk to Water that was at Frederick, and so my son participated in that, and we participated with him, and just a really brilliant way to share a story and have the kids engaged in that story. It was just a really nice thing. So I was going to share kudos. So kudos.
Sorry, Stephen, didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
None at all. None at all.
You know, that book cannot get enough recognition, and the exercise that the school and administrators have put together to breathe life into that book is just absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, extra kudos because they bring in one or two of the authors, you know, the real life folks to meet the students too. So, and just an awesome curricular experience.
I did want to answer the question and give a shout out to the right people. That was put together by Becky Payleitner, our information specialist, and also Mr. Goshi, the assistant principal. They worked really hard together on that. So I'm sure they will be really pleased to have it acknowledged. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Sorry, couldn't get off mute. I had one more kudos that I wanted to make sure got mentioned. The food drive that was held was amazing. There were just, the entire front of Park School was covered when I was there, and it was just really, really good to see our community. I mean, you know, I think our community has been just incredible throughout this whole thing, just supporting small businesses and supporting each other. So it was just another nice thing to see our community coming together to help out. And I would just say, keep giving. My neighbor volunteers for Northern Illinois Food Bank, and they ran out of food yesterday again at CLC. So keep giving, because that's, you know, so important right now. We have a lot of folks who are really, really feeling it. So let's keep it up. But thank you for everyone who participated in that. That was really cool.
Okay. Next would be the superintendent report.
Well, we're going to start with something fun. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Lewis. He gets to talk about fun things today.
I didn't know I was first. Oh my
You're
goodness.
first.
I didn't know the order. I was ready. So one of the fun things that we want to talk about is to celebrate our PE staff. And so community and families will either have gotten something today or will be getting something tomorrow about the Family Fitness Night. So the PE staff have been working across the district to plan a Family Fitness Night on Tuesday, January 5th. With 2 sessions, 4 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. I have a feeling if they go to the 4 o'clock, families might choose to go to the 6:30 as well because they're going to have so much fun. The PE staff have been working on fitness activities for the students, but also for the whole family that night. So it's going to be all through Google Meet. So there's a flyer that's going to be either has gone out today or will be going out tomorrow. Inviting everyone to the Family Fitness Night, January 5th, 4 p.m. or 6:30, and it's going to be all the schools together, not necessarily one for each school. So we'll get some intermingling of all the school staff and kids and such. So this was an idea that the PE staff wanted to do when we said, go for it. So that's the fun thing that's coming. And maybe after the holidays, a fitness night would be good for everybody. Maybe. Just a thought.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Thank you. That was fun. Also, some very positive news to be shared by Dr. Diaz.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment and thank the Grays Lake Kiwanis Club in partnership with Grays Lake High School's Key Club and the Grays Lake Park District for their generous donation of art supplies. We received crafts, craft kits, journals, markers, and these gifts will be given to our students during an art night that will be hosted by BPAC. It's very thoughtful.
We have a picture. Hang on. So take a look at all those fantastic supplies. So really, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for kind of bringing in the end and figuring out how we're going to use them. So thank you. All right. Well, I'll take it over. So last spring, we were in this position to need to decide how we were going to honor our 8th graders through their graduation. And it was pretty difficult. It was difficult in every possible way, including the time frame that we had for making decisions, and including the knowledge that we had or didn't have at the time surrounding the pandemic, right? That information just kept building. This year, we have more time to make decisions. And so we've begun that process, and I just wanted to make the board aware that we've begun that process. So several weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, the middle school principals and I met and started talking about options, and we realized that it was really important to get more voices in the room. So we began that process by putting out a thought exchange. We did that a couple of weeks ago. The same question went to all 8th grade parents and guardians and all 8th graders. So that was interesting because our parents, if they've chosen to participate in a thought exchange in the past, they would have already been used to it, but our students hadn't. But we did feel that our students would be able to rise to the occasion. And I will tell you, I was really impressed with our kids and what a good job they did with it. The question that we asked was simple. The question, wide open, as we like to do with thought exchange, was when it comes to 8th grade graduation, what is important to you? We had 182 parents or guardians respond, and 73 students respond. So to just get an idea of that 73 students, we have about 420 8th graders. And it was the same question that, it was GMS and Park were all responding together, it was one group. And so the results show a very strong interest in honoring our students through some type of a ceremony or other celebration. No surprise, there were folks with varying opinions about how far to go with that and what that actually means and whether and how to do an in-person ceremony, which is what many people were asking for. There were certainly comments about concerns about safety as well. But again, there was a strong interest in honoring students some way with some type of something in person. So our principals are now working on putting together a team of stakeholders. They sent an email out to the 8th grade parents to let them know a little bit about what I just said, basically what that strong interest was and letting them know more information was coming. But they'll be putting people together, including parent stakeholders, and I believe some students as well, to start talking about options. So we wanted to let you know about that. So that's about 8th grade graduation. On to what happens next here in our district long before 8th grade graduation. Obviously, we are all continuing to wonder and hope about being able to enact our hybrid plan at the end of January in through the beginning of February. We're continuing to watch the local metrics. I don't know if you've been looking at those metrics this past week. I can share with great pleasure that they have been declining over the past few days, which is really nice to see. We continue to be warned nationally and somewhat locally as well that they believe there's another surge is likely. We'll see. We're going to keep watching them. But right now, there has been a nice decline. So in any case, we're going to continue to watch them with hope that we can bring our students back into that hybrid program at the end of January, start of February. And families and staff should expect more information right at the start of January when we come back. We are kind of poised with possibilities of saying, it looks great. We really think we're going to do it. To, wow, the metrics have gone really high and it seems unlikely, and anywhere in between. But in the meantime, we continue to plan for that hybrid experience for our students. And finally, I'm going to end this on a high note. This is about our meal service. I learned today that we are about to hit the 100,000 meal mark for our students. And that is really something to be celebrated. I have to really give kudos to our partners. Arbor Meal Service and Durham Transportation have worked together so beautifully, and all under the leadership of Jane, who you were talking with earlier, and Mary, our other CSBO, who you also know, Mary Whirling, together and with those two vendors. And actually, I have to add in Adam and the custodial staff, because we have absolutely needed custodial staff to help load huge boxes filled with milk and every kind of food stuff onto buses in that Meals on the Bus program. So we're really, really pleased to serve the community in that way. And that ends the superintendent's report today.
Okay, can I just piggyback a little bit on your COVID-19 aspect? Sure. Anybody who is watching and everybody that is actually on the board and everybody that works for us, please go to the Lake County website and at least register for the vaccine. At least gets you in line and gives you time also to decide if you want it or not. It's not a guarantee that you have to take it. It's just a matter of you're in line and you get to make that choice when they do call you. Because otherwise you could get delayed even farther from getting the vaccine. You'd be basically at the end of the line. So smarter aspect is to get in line now, especially anybody who has pre-existing conditions, autoimmune system problems, health, lung problems, any of those type of things. Make sure you get in line for the vaccine, and you can always make your decision yes or no, however you want in the long run. So you can go to the Lake County website and sign up.
I would just add that you can indicate they have teachers as they have a list of who's considered an essential worker. So you can also identify yourself as an essential worker, and that of course helps in the prioritization as well.
Correct.
And I do want to assure you that we have been encouraging our staff to do that. And as recently as today, with a reminder, especially because we got good news today that that we were encouraging people who are staff members who don't live in Lake County, that they could sign up on the Lake County portal as well. So we had a whole other slew of people do that today.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Next will be the committee reports, and first up is the Community Engagement Committee.
That's me today. Is it okay for me to do my teacher thing and join with my other computer? Because I do have the presentation. I can bring it up. Is that all right?
Sure.
I'll do what I do in my classes. I have 3 computers going at a time here. All right. And Mrs. Braden mentioned the food drive, and that's exactly what I'm presenting on today too. So let me just go ahead and get this up here. All right. This is an update from the Community Engagement Committee with respect to the food donation drive that occurred in District 46. And Allison, who is one of our committee members, was in charge of this, and kind of really, her and Patricia drove this process and shared this presentation with us the other day at our Community Engagement Committee meeting on Tuesday. And I'm sharing with you here kind of an update on what was already shared, but just a little bit more detail, as well as a couple of next steps for the committee with respect to this type of event and the food donation drives within the district. They have some really cool plans that they would like to set in motion and presenting to the board, and looking for support from the district and from the board. So the Community Engagement Committee, created the food drive to support the Avon Cares food pantry, and these occurred back in November on the 28th and 29th at Park Campus, as was mentioned. And some of the statistics that were shared was that pantry serves regularly 250 families per week from all around the surrounding areas in the Avon Township. So Grays Lake, Round Lake, Haynesville, and so on and so forth. It's the pantry that's located in the township building off of Washington, and residents can receive food twice per month. And so we were supporting that community. And what was great, here's the example, the picture that Mrs. Braden mentioned with all that food in front, and it filled 5 full vans of food were delivered to the Avon Township Food Pantry. Just a fantastic success with some great pictures coming out of the front of Park School. The committee members also wanted us to know, in specifically this last slide here, in terms of the next steps for this type of initiative. We're going to continue to partner with the Avon Cares Food Pantry to conduct district-wide food drives at least 3 times per year, with the calendar looking at November, March, and July, which were specifically months that were requested by the pantry to coincide with their needs and needs at certain times during the year. The Community Engagement Committee will continue to organize communications, and we do both in English and Spanish to the district, including superintendents and schools, social media promotion and distribution. So that is something that the committee has been working diligently on to make sure that it's out there and the information is available, both in English and Spanish, to all community members. And we'll continue, as you probably saw with the first initiative, with the one in November. There's the flyer that was included in back to school packets, information for students to share with their families, and then organization of the volunteers safely at the food drive collection sites, in addition to coordinating food drop-offs. So one of the last bullet point there, the ask or the request of the Community Engagement Committee with support from the board and the district is to request additional food drop-off locations at potentially other schools in order to increase participation by families and access for that in order to provide more food to the pantry and increase that process. So those are the updates from the Community Engagement Committee at this time. Any questions? Or Christy, did I miss it? Mrs. Miller, did I miss anything? Or did I get it all?
Sir. You got it.
Did I get it all? Okay, I got it all.
Yep, you got it.
I got it all.
I did want to just respond. I think if the question is about food drop-off locations, we can make that happen, certainly. So
yeah, we'll bring that back to. We will definitely bring that back to the committee, and I'm sure Mrs. Miller is in agreement with me. This committee has just some amazingly fantastic people and volunteers and community members on there that are really driving this initiative, as well as many others, and really making this community engagement committee work in the community. So thank you to all those individuals that spend that extra time in this year to help us do that. They really are gracious and compassionate leaders in our community. That's my update.
Great. Thank you.
I will leave the meeting.
Don't go. Next will be the Equity and Inclusion Committee.
Great. I think I'm going to start us off, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Lewis. So in our last meeting, we as a committee found out that we have the opportunity to do something in the next, I'm not going to say timeline because I know Dr. Glickman might follow up at the end with a little bit of that, but we have the opportunity to at least get in line for an equity audit. And what is an equity audit? It's a holistic approach to ensuring our district is actively pursuing equity in all areas that are under our responsibility. So whether that be policy, curriculum, hiring, and other human resources, et cetera. So it really takes, just like a financial audit takes a broad look across the financial practices and controls, the equity audit does the same thing. And, why is that important? It really helps us prioritize where we invest our time and resources into the issues that will best create equity in our district. So sometimes when we're inside, we might have an idea as to what those look like. And there might be some things that are so ingrained in how we do things in the district that we don't necessarily see the inequities that we're creating. And that, those unintentional equities to me are the most insidious, because certainly I don't know anyone in this district that wants to be inequitable. And, everyone, I think, tries to have their eyes open as much as possible. We do identify some things. And I think, even through the reopening plan, we've identified those things, which has been great. However, there are things that we're just blind to because, they're part of the soup that we swim in and we don't see them. So the audit helps raise those issues to the surface. So we've been talking about this for a while. We've been talking about the potential for an audit for a couple of years now. It's just, we think about, how do we really have that broader impact on the district versus just, hitting pieces here and there. And this summer, it really bubbled to the top of our list after the murder of George Floyd and the unrest in different communities around in the area. We felt it was just becomes an acute need for us to look at our equity practices and be sure that we can say that we're living our diversity and equity commitment in the district. They are not cheap. They do cost money. And that, of course, is always a concern in our district is, where do we find the right funds and, prioritize this? So good news is that the district office staff have been working with the state to find out if Title II funds could be used to offset the cost of the audit and any follow-up activities related to the audit. Title II, and I know that, our district leaders will chime in if I get this wrong, but Title II is used for school district improvements through professional learning opportunities. So we have received permission from the state to include this in our grant application for Title II for the next school year. So, we'll, as we learn more, if there are additional expenses beyond the audit that we need to include in that for taking action on the things identified in the audit, that'll be the plan. So we're not asking for any sort of, approval or payment right now. We're not paying right now. We just need to get on that list because as you can imagine, this is something that a lot of districts are investing in right now. So we'll come back with, pricing and timing once we know more. And, there's just what level do we want to do? There's some other decisions to make. And Dr. Glickman, did you want to just talk about some of those discussions in terms of, other districts' recommendations, anything that you're learning as you're in conversation?
Yeah, sure. So actually, beginning of the week, I think it was the beginning of the week, Mr. Lewis and I met with another school district that has just completed the audit process, and they're kind of in their round 2 now, where they're in the what now conversation. So that other district is the district where Ellen Carell is currently the interim superintendent. So Mr. Lewis met with Mrs. Carell and two of her administrators who were involved in this from the get-go. We were able to hear about their experiences with the particular auditor that we are talking to. That's who they're using, and that is who I had already been in contact with and had already asked her about being on her list and the pricing. So it all is just wrapping together very nicely. They had wonderful things to say about the process. And so our next step is to be meeting with this auditor to talk about really which package, I guess I would say, would best meet the needs of our school district. And those have to do with really how many focus groups the auditor meets with, that kind of thing. So we come back to you with that information once we've made that kind of determination. Paul, what would you like to add to that?
I just was excited about the meeting and to hear this information that they got. It is not a one and done kind of a situation. It is not just one meeting. And so I'm being really clear about that it may take multiple months for us to prepare for the audit because we have to gather data. They really want to have all the hidden voices part of the audit. And so they really want us to reach out to all those people and groups and that we don't always hear from. So we don't want it all just to be the same people talking and sharing. We want all those different groups represented. So it's going to take us time to do that. Then the audit will include lots of small groups, all these focus groups, because they wanted to be in native language, for example, or they wanted to be comfortable so that it's not a huge group so people are comfortable talking. So that's part of the package. We have to decide how many of those groups we want to have. And then they take all that information. And then I want to make sure we hear it. I'm going to say it a couple of times. There is going to be a significant delay before we get the report back. They take serious amount of time. We heard up to 4 to 5 months after the audit begins, once they start the whole process to get our results back. They would then come to do a board presentation. And then they would be working with us to, what do we do now when we have all this data? So it may turn out that we want to have a multi-year relationship with this group because it is not a quick fix either once we get to that point. So I just was rejuvenated. It is something, as Christy said, something our group has been talking about. And the whole concept of having somebody else with fresh eyes come into the district and not just us continuing to say, oh, okay, those are things we need to do differently. And so there probably will be some emotional topics or hard topics that we need to continue to address, but that's what I think we're ready to do and we need to do, and it's passionate work. We have a committee who wants to be involved, but it also will be lots of other people included. I know I talked more than just a fast little comment, but it is exciting. And just to go back to what Christy said, I did have to do some research with the state. It's the first time I think that anyone's asked for this for the grant, but they really do see how that could be professional learning for everyone and to help us move our district along. So I was very excited when they indicated that Title II could be used to support this initiative. That's all I have to say about all that.
Well, I'm handing it right back to you, Paul, because you're going to talk about the other agenda item. So,
well, Ms. Braden, if I may, before you pivot off of this topic, I heard during the conversation an update, which was phenomenal, by the way. Thank you all. I believe yourself and also Dr. Glickman indicated that there's other neighboring districts that are looking into doing something very similar, if not identical. I'm just curious from a cost share standpoint, right? Since we're always trying to be fiscally responsible, is this something that we would entertain engaging our colleagues in District 127, if that's something that we could kind of scale costs across both districts, given we're talking about the same demographic and stakeholder base?
We can certainly look into it and pursue it. I think, so, as we talked about earlier, there are all these different price points, and it kind of affects, how many groups you're bringing together. But I do want to comment that we're assessing a system and not just a community. So we're going to be looking at the District 46 practices and procedures, which are different from those in District 127. So I'm not sure if they would support, if the auditors would support such an idea. From a cost sharing perspective, it's a great plan though. And certainly even the fact that you asked that question, Tamika, might bring us into thinking about other ways to do cost sharing along the road as we're working on this. So I'm glad you asked it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tamika.
Or were there any other questions before I continue?
Yeah, I have one. I'm curious if we can use thought exchange somehow in this, either in place of focus groups or if as a complement to focus groups.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
And we'll certainly bring that as a possibility to the folks that we're talking to.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions about the topic? So that was a portion of our meeting. We had another amazing portion, and there's a phrase that I often talk about. And so the phrase goes, we're doing the best we can with what we know now. When we learn more, we'll do even better. So you may have heard a phrase, something like that in the past. And so we had one of those opportunities for me that night, and I think for many people on the group. One of our newer members, Mrs. Wake, who is our info specialist from Meadowview, had brought up a topic in our open kind of discussion one time at a previous meeting, and we said, we need to learn more about this. So can you help us learn more? And so it was her opportunity, and she willingly said, yes, I will research, I'll get it ready. So one of the things that our district and many of our schools, we've participated in a program called Read Across America. It has historically been surrounded by the birth date for Dr. Seuss. That event has been sponsored by the NEA, the National Education Association, for many years. So we have many schools in the district who've done something or who have sent information home about the Read Across America. Well, interestingly, NEA has changed their plans for that event moving forward. And some of it has been some information that has come up about the author, Dr. Seuss. So NEA has rebranded that event. They have removed any involvement or association with Dr. Seuss and have rebranded the celebration as Celebrating a Nation of Diverse Readers. And so NEA has made that choice to change. So before we get too far in our planning for the district, that's why we wanted to learn more about it. And so I do believe it's going to be on our next agenda again, but I do believe that we as a equity and inclusion committee may be recommending that in the district, that we encourage and promote the Celebrating a Nation of Diverse Readers and try something different moving forward as we learn. And I'm not going into all the details, but there are some concerns about some of the publications that Dr. Seuss had and some of the comments he had made that are being unearthed as we look at things through a new lens of inclusion, equity, diversity, all of those kind of things. So we want to make sure that we have this conversation early enough so that we can be proactive with our staff to let them know that we would encourage a different plan for this school year. So that's kind of what I said, we're always learning, we're figuring things out, and we want to do better. And so some of it is our own learning, and then we want to share it on to other people in the district as well. So Christy and Lynn and anybody else who was in the committee that night, anything else you'd like me to add to that? So we again thank Mrs. Wake for doing the research and sharing resources with us and helping us think about what our next steps would be as a district for that. That's all. Any questions or reactions or wonderings?
Just a comment, Mr. Lewis, that I continue to be impressed with the amount of due diligence that our Equity and Inclusion Committee takes to ensuring that, we are living into our model of one district. So nice work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Obviously, we know that we have so much more to learn. I think every time we meet, we uncover another little thing or some more things to work on. And we can't tackle it all at once, but we're plugging away and trying our best to do what we think is important. So thank you for that. I think we're finished.
Sorry, I didn't realize I put myself on mute. So thank you for the reports. Next, we have, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Braden? Aye. Nash?
Aye.
LaCroy?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye. Okay, next we'll move on to action items. Is this, one question real quick, is this 4 different motions or is this one motion covering all of those?
You can make one motion.
Okay, thanks, Jane. All right, so I need a motion to approve the 2020 tax levy in the total amount of $30,181,646. Resolution regarding amounts necessary to be levied for the 2020 year. Resolution to levy certain special taxes for Special Education District IMRF purposes. A resolution to levy working cash tax, and a resolution to levy tort tax.
So moved.
So moved. Oh, second. Weedman?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
Braden? Aye. LaCroy?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next is a motion to accept the financial audit for June 30, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Can I ask a question real quick? I have some people wanting to join this call. Is it okay to accept them? I'm sorry.
Yes, those are strategic planning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bring them in.
LaCroy?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
Okay, this is an annual thing we have to do every year for the 2 union seniority lists. So we need a motion to approve the 2020, 2021 seniority lists.
So moved.
I'll second.
Mack?
Aye.
Braden?
I think she just came back.
Oh, Braden?
Aye. Sorry, when I was trying to unmute.
LaCroy?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. Next is a motion to approve the following board policies: 2.260 uniform grievance procedure, 2:265 Title 9 sexual harassment grievance procedures, 5:10 equal employment opportunity minority recruitment, 5:20 workplace harassment prohibited, 5:100 staff development program, 5:220 substitute teachers, 7:10 equal education opportunities, 7:20 harassment of students prohibited, 7:180 prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment, and finally 7:185 teen dating violence prohibited. These are all policies that we discussed at the last board meeting and had very few changes within them. So if I could have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Jim, can I just ask a question before we vote? When will these come up again? Because we anticipated a change in them with a new administration. So I just don't want to lose that and make sure that when and if the new administration changes anything, that we circle back to these as quickly as possible.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
So we subscribe to the press policy service, and one of the reasons that we do that is to make sure that we are always right there when any law changes that affects our policies. So they will let us know when it's time to reconsider a policy based on change of law.
Okay, and just to recap, if we vote against this, that has legal ramifications for the district, is that correct?
This is federal. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
this is the new Title 9. So this is at the federal level. Yes,
Gotcha.
this we have to do this.
Okay, thank you.
There are certain things within it that we have some leeway on, but we're going to take most of the recommendations and then use some more inclusive language.
Now, certainly always, if there are specific questions about a policy and a board member is requesting us to review specific language, we can go back and look to see, is a tweak in that language going to allow us to continue following the law and tweak the language? But in terms of the law, we have to follow the requirements.
Okay.
And I had just a additional clarifying question too, that we are going with the lower level. We are not going to clear and convincing on that one question. We have the choice and we're staying with preponderance. Is that correct, Mr. Wolk?
Yes, that was the discussion last time, that we would stick with the preponderance.
Okay, you know, when I was reviewing, I had that impression, but I wanted to be triple sure because, like Mrs. Miller, this is a vote under duress for me. I'm not happy about it. I will do it, but I'm stating my absolute disdain at this time before we vote for this law. And I want to see a change ASAP. As a woman, thank you.
Right there with you, Christy.
Okay, so
Mac,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Weedman,
aye.
Nash.
Aye.
Okay, next is our unfinished business. The first item is strategic planning discussion. Dr. Lippman, I believe you're going to lead that, correct?
Well, I'm actually going to introduce some wonderful people who are going to lead that. I'm just going to set the stage for them. So tonight we have with us Dr. Don White, Dr. Gary Zabilka, and I'm not sure if their third partner is joining us tonight. Maybe not, but Dr. Rich Volz is their third partner. These are the strategic planners that we have hired to lead our strategic planning process. They're going to be talking with us first about the process itself and what it will look like for us. Then we'll talk a little bit about a timeline, and I've kind of prepped you all a little bit with that, but I want to talk about it here because if we're going to use the timeline that I've mentioned to you already, we have to get moving on it because we need to be inviting people to join our process. And then the third leg will be to talk about the group of people that we'll be bringing in and who will be involving, which stakeholders will be involving, and we want to engage our board in that conversation as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our facilitators.
Okay.
It's okay. We're waiting. They're having a little sound problem. We've all been there.
There we go. Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Glickman, if I may just say, I think Dr. Volz is in the waiting room trying to be admitted.
No.
So I'm hoping that he'll still get the opportunity to join us. He was fully planning on being here with us this evening. So if we can just double check and see if he may still be there.
Thank you.
So with that, well, good evening, Grayslake District 46 Board of Education. I know you've had considerable amount of time in your board meeting already, and but we'd like to take the opportunity to not only introduce ourselves, but as Dr. Glickman had mentioned, share with you a bit about the process, the timeline, and some impending decisions that are going to need to occur sooner than later to launch the process. My name is Gary Zabilka. I am a retired school superintendent. I was a superintendent in Morton Grove in North Cook County. I am a Lake County resident and have been for 40 years. I probably live about 20 minutes away from your district, and really look forward to working with your Board of Education and with your community. With that, I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well. Dr. White.
Great evening, everyone. It's our pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm Don White. I'm a retired superintendent, just retired July 1st after 19 years as a superintendent in several communities and education for 33 years. My role is to do a lot of the data work. So you may or may not see me as a face presenting, but I'll be behind the scenes actually helping with the process and answering questions and making sure that we're on time with everything. So it's our pleasure to join you, and we look forward to the process.
Okay, so with that, I don't see Dr. Volz with us just yet. Don, I'm not sure if you want to try to reach out to Rich and ask him to try again to get onto this message, but I'll go ahead and begin in the meantime. First of all, it's our pleasure and privilege to serve the District 46 Board of Education and Community doing your strategic planning. As an educational firm, we basically have just launched our firm several months ago. We are all experienced educators. Combined, we added and found that we've got well over 100 years of experience in education, collectively, that is. And as such, we look forward to working with you and sharing with you some of the knowledge and expertise we hope to bring to your district. So a couple of things about strategic planning. This is an excellent opportunity for your board and your community to review and reflect on who Grayslake District 46 is as a district, and really do some soul searching as to not only who you are, but who you'd like to be and where you'd like to see the district go in the future. As such, we'll be looking at things collectively. And when we say collectively, not only the Board of Education, but this is an inclusive process whereby we'd like to involve not only the administration and the Board of Education, but then also teachers, staff members, parents, and community members. In working with Dr. Glickman thus far, we've already determined that we can have well over 40 people be a part of this process. And as facilitators, we're well-versed and experienced in working with groups this large in order to bring you as a district to where you would like to go. We're looking at launching this process on January the 20th. And again, we've had some conversations already as to what these meetings will look like. Because of circumstances, although we would normally love to meet face to face and in a large room with everybody, we don't see that that's going to be possible in the near future. So therefore, we are looking to do probably most of this process via Zoom. We see that we would not only have that initial meeting in January, but we have already scheduled and have on paper dates that would include 2 dates in February and 2 dates in March if necessary. So we're looking at 5 meetings all told. That would be evening meetings roughly from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m., at which point we would then involve and engage all of these stakeholders that we will refer to as the core stakeholder team. Okay, we refer to that in the acronym CST. That group will be the heartbeat, if you will, of the community. Although we also do intend to interview and utilize your thought exchange program to solicit input from community members regarding certain aspects that we'll be looking to seek their input as it relates to who you are as a district and what people see as your purpose as a district. So as a result of going through this process, what we hope to then deliver is, as a district, you would be able to not only know who you are as a district, and I realize that may sound a little esoteric at this point, but more importantly, what's your purpose as a district? You know, one of the things that I've heard somebody say recently is that everybody turns to school districts these days to what they used to pray to God for. And as such, we become everything to everybody. And as a district, basically, you have a purpose. What is that purpose? What does your community believe your purpose to be? And those are the things that we will work with you and the stakeholders, and by soliciting input from your community, that we will seek data on, that we will then help and work with the community stakeholder team, the core stakeholder team, to develop that purpose. We're also going to determine what you value as a district. Your values determine what you do. And granted, as individuals, we all have values. As a district and as an organization, you too have values. What are those? We're going to go through some exercises that will help you determine what those values are, so that you, as a board especially, will have a better idea how best you could lead this district and make decisions that are consistent with the values that you would like to see promoted throughout your district. Then we will address, where would you like to go as a district? Where would you like to see yourself 2 years from now? Where would you like to see yourself 4 years from now? Basically, we do that by not only doing a visioning process, but by establishing goals that will get you to that vision that then gets established as a district. So it's an all-encompassing process that very much will focus on, again, those basic questions of who you are as a district, what's your purpose, and where would you like to see District 46 go in the future. So with that, I'm going to pause for just a moment. We did have our colleague, Rich Volz, join us. So excuse the brief segue here, but Rich, we're going to just have you briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll continue talking about the process.
Well, good evening, everybody. I've spent a long career in public education. I was a high school teacher and coach, high school principal, and then unit superintendent for 19 years, and then head of the Superintendent's Association in Illinois for professional development. In addition, I spent 20 years as an adjunct professor at Eastern Illinois University. So I've worked closely with Gary and Don over the past several years on a variety of topics, and we're here to serve you on your quest for your strategic plan.
All right. Well, very good. Well, with that, Dr. Glickman, I'm not sure if we're prepared to show the slide that we have that gives an overview. Now would be an excellent time to share that slide.
And there it is.
There we go. So basically, this is a Gantt chart that shows, even as of today, you'll see December 16th, you've got the Board of Education and Ed Leadership Solutions identifying a core stakeholder team. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. But then you'll see what we have laid out as far as what the different aspects of this process will look like here in the left-hand column. You'll see that we'll be reviewing your district's current documents. Okay, your district does have a mission and a vision and may specify some core values. We'll take a look at what is currently in place. We'll also then look at reviewing and recreating those documents in order to fit who Grayslake District 46 is today. Strategic planning is a process that's not just something that you do, establish, and then put on a shelf. Strategic planning is a process by which you develop and discover these aspects, and then you utilize them on a consistent and regular basis to help inform decision-making throughout the different aspects that you'll be facing as a school board and as a district. We'll also be looking at your district's current reality. Where are you today as a district in a number of areas? Academically, facilities-wise, finance-wise, communications-wise, technology-wise. We'll look and zero in on all of these areas to see where you are today. We'll look at doing a SWOT analysis, which is a strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis to determine what are those key focus areas as a district that you need to be not only aware of, but need to maybe focus on moving forward. From there, we'll create the district's goals based on the needs that are identified throughout the SWOT process. And then we'll look to review the final products for alignment. We'll have a mission, we'll have a vision, we'll have core values, and we'll have goals that ideally will all align so that you can see as a district the direction that your community would like to see your district go moving forward. You see that it encompasses a number of meetings. We've got January 15th. I may have mentioned January. Oh, no, there's January 20th. Excuse me. January 20th is the actual launch date that we're looking for the process to begin with the core stakeholder team. From there, we'll give ourselves a couple of weeks and then meet again on February 3rd, on February 17th, and on March 3rd to focus on each of these tasks that were just identified in the left-hand column. By the end of March, it's our hope that we will have completed the various steps that we have just gone through so that we can then review the final products to make sure that they are truly aligned, and then to make sure that the board is in agreement, since the board is the decision-making body of the district, that you agree that this is the direction that you would like to see the district move forward with. So I've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, and the process is one that I think not only will you as a board feel more informed as a board, but your community also will have a better idea as to not only what they can expect as the district, but also where they see you moving forward in the district as well for the future. So with that, I guess we'll pause for a quick moment and ask if any of you have any specific questions regarding the process that was outlined. If some of this looks foreign to you, that's quite all right. We haven't gone through the process yet, and part of our role is to work with you going through all of these various aspects. But I guess maybe from a global perspective, does anybody have any questions regarding what we hope to achieve working with you for your district? Okay. Well,
no.
Thank you, Mr. Weidman. With that, we then would like to focus on what we consider to be the key aspect, one of the key aspects of this process, and that is the core stakeholder team. Now, the core stakeholder team is that group that will be meeting 4 or 5 times in the evenings from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So it's going to require a commitment of their time. But this is the group where we'd like to have a cross-section of stakeholders from the district to represent your district. And these will be the key decision makers. Granted, we'll be providing opportunities for the community to offer input along the way. However, it'll come to this group that will then make the decisions that will help us to be able to continue to move forward. So with that, in initial conversations with Dr. Glickman, we had already established that that 7 Board of Education members would be a part of this. So as the Board of Education, I hope you're in agreement with that. It's a very important aspect for you to be here, not only because of your past experiences as board members, but also moving forward as a district. And whether or not you intend to stay on the board, for tremendous amounts of time moving forward, your input into this process is going to be invaluable. So, it's important that we have all 7 of you participate. So far we've got 7 board members. We've got a superintendent, so that would be 8 members. What we're looking at are 10 administrators, 10 teachers, and 10 parents/community members to try to give equality, if you will, to the process. Dr. Glickman was very helpful in sharing with us your last district strategic plan. And we noticed that it just appeared to be imbalanced with regard to representation. So that's one of the things that, as a board, you represent the entire community at this point. But do you feel that 10 parents/community members, 10 teachers, and 10 administrators would provide that balance that we'd like to see, not to mention 5 support staff people as well? Thank you, Dr. Glickman.
That was the best.
Yes. Thoughts, comments?
Well,
go ahead, Jim, sorry.
Well, as Dr. Glickman and I discussed on the phone prior, like last week when we started talking about this, is where we kind of came up with making sure we had a fairly balanced group of stakeholders to participate. And if I remember right, we upped one of those groups to try and make it a little more balanced.
So yeah, Jim, you had proposed that we add some more parents and community members, and I thought we would be having that conversation here. And I don't know if it's helpful to you, but I do have a list of when we did it last time in 2014, what kinds of community members you had as a part of it. Is that useful for you to hear? Okay, so along with parents and foundation members, because there were people who are part of the District 46 Foundation who were also parents. You also had someone from you had a Grays Lake trustee, a member from the Grays Lake Public Library, and someone from the Grays Lake Heritage Center. So that's who was included last time. But absolutely, there were definitely more. There were 18 parents and community members last time.
One of the things that is important also to take a look at, as you look at these numbers, oftentimes we consider how many insiders, if you will, people within the school versus people outside of the school that are, still valuable contributors to your community. And as such, as Dr. Glickman was saying, it's not unusual to ask people from other public entities, whether it be your village, sometimes known as the village people, or library people, park district people, or if there's a chamber of commerce in your community, if somebody from the chamber, but just representation, people who would represent potentially other groups within your community. And, I think based on the numbers as we initially laid them out, does afford some latitude in being able to add a few more community members, just again to look at maybe trying to keep things as balanced as possible and trying to have as many inside people as within the district as we may have from just outside the district walls per se, but also part of the community.
I had a question and a thought. One, to just take us back to the teachers are we assuming that teachers include then union representation, or is that kind of the 10 will represent both teachers as well as our 2 bargaining units?
Yeah, I mean, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. Just want to make sure. I assume that. Just want to clarify it. And then the second thought I have is just around, how do we engage maybe some of the seniors in our community? We've talked a lot about just bringing them in as part of the community and really tapping into them and helping them feel like, they're part of the process, and maybe helping educate that segment of our community as well about what we do and how we do it. So I don't know if that's specifically Carillon, because I know we have other senior living facilities in our community, one right by the library. So just, thought a reach out to maybe one of those organizations would be an interesting piece of the puzzle for us.
I think those are excellent suggestions. I'm not sure if Grays Lake has a seniors organization throughout the community that maybe one can
like a council on
that
aging
group.
or something like that.
Sure.
I
Maybe
don't know
one
if they
can
do.
tap that group for a couple of key stakeholders who may be interested in this. The other piece is you want to find people who are interested in this kind of work as well as committed to it. Really see the benefit of being a part of this. We're glad to have them, and hopefully they're glad to be a part of the process as well.
I'm wondering if we might want to include custodians and in this group too, because they're not represented right now, and then also former students or current students. I know we've talked about having an 8th grade advisory group, and I think kids are pretty good voices, even if they're just part of the process, if they show up for a part of it instead of the whole. And then my other question is, one of the things that struck me, I know you weren't on the meeting earlier, but we're talking about doing an equity audit. And that audit includes using focus groups because it gets at the nuances that might be invisible to us. And it includes a lot more people than 40. So I'm curious if it's possible to embrace and integrate focus groups in this. I know we're doing thought exchange, but that's a limited, access is limited to that. So 2 questions. One is, can we include custodians and students? And then also our focus groups, is that possible? Especially because, and I'll jump once more, it might make our process more culturally sensitive so that we can offer Spanish translation and access that might support participation from BPAC.
Well, I'd like to just address the first question that you have. So our custodians are part of the support staff union, and so they will be included within that grouping. But I would love to hear our facilitators take on involvement of students, and then certainly the question about the focus groups.
Sure. I'm going to ask Don and Rich to feel free to jump in. I'm going to initially respond to the student aspect. And I would say to that piece, I think that would be a welcomed group to identify just a small handful of students. And typically, we would look at 6th or 7th graders as a part of the process, only because your 8th graders are short-termers. And because the process is actually being done and developed for the future, that you would include students who may be able to reap the fruits of the process. So that would be the only reason that would be looking at 6th and or 7th grade students.
Gary,
but I think that's an excellent idea. Sure.
Yeah, I could real quick, just a quick thought on the students also. I've done that before. I was, most of my 19 years was in an elementary district as a superintendent, and I included students. One of the things to keep in mind is you probably want to pair students because it's intimidating for students. So make sure they know each other so they can have conversation. Otherwise, it's a lonely feeling. Unless you have that, we all know those students that are a little more precocious than others. You know, you can always find those students, but sometimes the quiet students are the ones that have the deepest thoughts and have meaning. So that's just a side note that I might offer.
Sure. Regarding the equity piece, actually, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Ms. Miller, because it's the equity piece that even in developing the core stakeholder team that we try to address the equity. In other words, as you take a look at your teacher group, as you take a look at your community stakeholders and your parent stakeholders, we try to get a blend of different groups represented as a part of that group. Otherwise, it looks like one may be catering to groups in particular, and there's always a challenge of then leaving a certain group out that maybe we might not address. And that can happen even in looking at the core stakeholder team as a large group, that we still run that risk. But as much as we can, if we can take a look at creating as much diversity and equity within that core stakeholder team, that is, you know, truly the group that is the decision-making group. And I think the focus group opportunity, I'm not so sure it would lend itself as well to the process as utilizing the thought exchange in combination with the core stakeholder team. That's only my thought from my experience in doing these kinds of processes in other places.
Great, thank you. I just have one other comment. With the current distribution, it looks like, let's see, 10 administrators, 5 support staff, 10 teachers, that's 25 are paid employees of our district. And that seems like a power imbalance to me. So I'm just wanting to think carefully about how we make sure that they don't feel inclined to have to say what they think their bosses want them to say in the process. And want to make just, could you talk a little bit about that and how the process will accommodate that reality?
That's an interesting question. And, you know, it's funny. One of the things about this process is that it's typically looked at almost as a privilege to be a part of a group like this, because you are the people who are making the decisions that will ultimately create the pathway for the district to move forward in the future. And that being the case, you know, we try to build in enough checks and balances. And, you know, I would like to think, and yet at the same time, it may reflect somewhat of your culture, but I would like to think that people will, we encourage people as the facilitators. Our role is to encourage people to truly speak their minds, and that everybody as a part of the process is considered an equal. So even though they're administrators or board members who are a part of this team, we say that, and you know, should we be adding students, their voice is as equal as anybody else's as a part of that group. So by being equals, we kind of need to brush aside who's getting a paycheck, who's not getting a paycheck, who's been here the longest, who's been here the shortest. But everybody becomes an equal, including the board members who are the decision makers, but your voice does not stand for anything more than any other participant in this group. So that's one of the ways that we can level the playing field to an extent. The decisions that we make, we work on a consensus basis, whereby it's not a democratic rule, if you will, that determines the pathway that the district will ultimately decide on. It's consensus whereby we have to have 100% agreement, not on everything that's said, but agreement that we will agree to support it, and we're not going to do anything to sabotage whatever it is that we create. So by instilling some of those values at the outset of the process, and that would happen at that very first meeting on January 20th, and then remind people of that throughout the succeeding meetings, that we remind everybody that it is an encompassing process where people are viewed as equals, that people should speak their minds, because heaven forbid if they do not, then they potentially could be doing the district more harm than not. And that actually you will hear we as facilitators saying that to them, because it needs to be an open process in order for it to truly get the value that you would like it to have.
And if I could also, Gary, that it's our job as facilitators to listen for that happening if it does happen, and then to adjust how we approach activities or discussions to make sure that there is that balance in the room, so that you come out with a holistic approach to this.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the strong intent behind equity and making sure that people are able to speak their minds. Really appreciate that you have a tool for that in terms of consensus building too. So thank you for clarifying that.
Great questions. Thank you.
Can you clarify for me the selection process for those categories of participants? I know as 7 board members we're in the process, but and I'm specifically thinking of the parent group. We have a very fairly large community, a broad community of stakeholders, and I'm thinking specifically to different parts of the community that don't traditionally participate or actively volunteer, and consequently whose voices are not always at the table, and who might benefit. And I know that we as a district and a board and a community would benefit from hearing those voices and making sure that those are at the table. And if we're selecting 10, how do we get to those 10? Is there an interview process, an application process? You may have mentioned it, and forgive me if I didn't hear it, but it would help if I could get that clarified.
I'd be happy to start fielding that answer, and perhaps our facilitators can jump right in. So we've had some success over the past year, as we've been sending so many communications out to our community, of getting people to respond to surveys and forms and such. So my intent was that tomorrow I would be sending out information about the strategic planning process, a little bit about what the purpose is, the dates, the time commitment, that kind of thing, along with an invitation for people to fill out, complete a form. And actually that was going to go to parents and to staff as well. Regarding the concern that you're bringing, Stephen, we would have some of our principals reach out to a few of the parents who they think might not otherwise throw their hat in the ring, so to speak. Folks who we maybe would need to encourage. Our time is of the essence here. It's very unfortunate that we're having the conversation now, right before our winter break. So I want it to go out tomorrow with the intent that, hey, folks need to get back to us. I think I have a date midweek after winter break, giving us a few days for me to look at those names with actually some of our administrators, so that we know people and create a nice, well-rounded, balanced group. But I'm very eager for other ideas that our facilitators would have for that process as well. You want to jump in?
Well, I would say even the group that we have here on the screen tonight, those of you who are involved, if you know of people that you feel, not in a biased way by any means, but people who may have something to contribute, Mr. Mack, I think you nicely said that there may be people out there that you haven't heard from. If you know what groups those are or someone that might fit that camp, I would say let Dr. Glickman know that. And, we could develop that list of people that might not surface any other way, through the buildings and through the obvious active people in the community. So I would say if there are, what I'd call sleepers out there, people who may not come to the forefront, yet at the same time know that they do have something to offer and may be interested in participating, I would say those are the people that you may want to tap into and see if they'd be willing to participate. Again, there is a time commitment, and there's also the understanding that they are committed in doing what's in the best interest of the district. And if they hold, those two ideals, I would say let's get them signed up and bring them on board. And we would rather have too many than not enough. As far as representation is concerned, not that we want our numbers to get into the 50s and 60s if we could avoid it, but if we could round out this group to be mid 40s, maybe approaching 50, I think it would be a nice representative group. Grays Lake is a large community, and yet at the same time, I think we could have a representative group be able to speak on behalf of the rest of the Grays Lakeans. That's not what you call yourself, is it, by chance?
No, we have communities as well. So
It totally is.
Yeah, we have a number of communities, not just
Okay.
Grace Lake. So to go back to what Jim was leading with initially, expanding our parent community member group, maybe we should go back there. So, initially there was a proposal of 10. Jim and I talked about the potential of expanding that to 15. Is that something that our board would be, and I, by the way, talked with our facilitators about that. They felt comfortable with that expansion as well. So does that make sense to the rest of our board?
I think it would help us be more inclusive, and I love it.
Yep.
If our facilitators can manage that many, awesome.
Well, honestly, the numbers that we initially had brought us to 42. So 5 more is just 47. That's without students. I don't know, and I'd be eager to talk with our 3 facilitators about where we would bring students in, because I'm not sure we'd be asking our students to be committing to 12, 15 hours of time on school nights, by the way, right? So maybe there are ways to include some students without having them be full members of the team with all of those responsibilities. I'll be eager to talk with the 3 of you about how you've done that in the past.
Sure.
Dr. Glickman, I like the idea of adding additional stakeholders, especially when we talk about our senior demographic, as well as some of the, I'd say, not quite golden year stakeholders, but whose families still live in the district, but maybe they have District 127 kids now. Or new college, off to college kids. So, there are those demographics that obviously still, carry the tax burden to support the district that don't necessarily have children in our classrooms.
Yeah, and what we can do is share this invitation to respond to the form through Twitter, through our Facebook account, so that to potentially reach some of those people who aren't part of our parent population and are not a part of the targeted groups. I am curious, but then there are the folks that I need to, or someone needs to reach out to directly. So I would be interested to know what buckets you're interested in making sure we fill. So I've heard the potential of one of our senior centers or senior homes, or if there's a seniors or senior organization, what other groups would you like to make sure that we tap?
I think the Arts Alliance will have some interesting contributions to make, especially in a design context. And then I wouldn't discount the D127 board. One of the things that we're trying to do is align kind of an education pipeline and also CLC. And finally, I'm thinking about I'm trying to pick, perhaps thinking more about people who have left the district and have chosen homeschool or private school options. They might have some interesting insights that would support creating a direction that's more inclusive.
I also, this isn't a given, but I'm just, we have a PFLAG organization in Grays Lake, and that might be an interesting group to tap as well, just from a diversity and representation perspective.
Christy, what's PFLAG?
Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. So it's a support organization for LGBTQ community.
Thanks.
I would add, obviously, with my own experience, families with students and children with special needs. Beyond me, in my capacity, bringing my own experience to this, I think there's many voices out there that don't get heard for that group, and we need some new representation there.
Good.
Okay, and then again, last time you had a Grays Lake trustee, someone from the public library, and someone from the Heritage Center. Are those specific groups that you think are important? And I'm asking these questions because then I'm going to come back to you in a moment with a count of how many that is, and to see what we can manage here.
Well, I think the village is an important group. So mostly because the majority of their decisions that they make regarding development and how the community is being built directly impacts our district. From commercial properties to new homes or whatever, that directly affects us. So I think we need to, make sure we have somebody from there like we did the last time. There are, you could put it out to almost any, some of these people will carry double hats, right? There'll be a village trustee and there'll be somebody with a kid in the district, or there'll be a library board member or D127 board member, and they'll hold, as Stephen does, he holds multiple hats. He's an educator, he has children with disabilities, he's on the board. So I think there'll be plenty of people out there to fill these roles, without having to really expand the number count.
That's a good point, Mr. Wheatman, and not to pile on, and we may just need to go through a prioritization exercise once Dr. Glickman comes back with the numbers. But I was also thinking to myself, a representative from the Grays Lake Park District, because they cut across all demographics, economic levels. So, they are uniquely positioned to be a voice of the constituents of multiple groups in our community, from children, toddlers, through our seniors that they offer adult programming for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm wondering, and again, I know you're adding into this list, and maybe this is multiple hats, but I really like that. And I would also add special recreation to that, because then special recreation sits outside of the Park District unit. So we're part of Special Recreation Association of Central Lake County here. So again, maybe there's a multiple hat that can be worn, or a way to reach out to them where they're not on the core committee, but that, they are part of that full picture of our community as well. And I love the Park District also because it's, they're using our facilities in the before times as well. So they're truly partners with us too.
Are there other groups? So I'm trying to divide this into one bucket of people who may or may not be parents or guardians in our district, and then folks who probably are. So are there other in-district committees or communities that you would want to make, people who might be parents who you want to make sure are included in some way? So for example, last time there were a bunch of Foundation 46 members that were a part of this. We haven't mentioned the foundation yet. Would we want to make sure that there was a foundation member who was on here? Would we want to make sure there's a member from the Equity and Inclusion Committee, a member from the CEC? I guess that's what I'm wondering about as well. Or do you feel like those folks already have a voice in some other way?
I think what's more important to me is that we don't just have token representation, that we actually have people who are coming in with a clear perspective that will complement those of school employees. So I think if we slice and dice, we can slice and dice this a whole bunch of different ways, but I would just caution us to not say that. Similarly, we wouldn't say that okay, if we have one woman on it, now she can represent all women in our community. And likewise, I don't think we can say, if we have one person who's on the village board, that person would be responsible or able to represent all of the economic implications or economic perspectives. So I think maybe another way to slice this is, do we have residents and non-residents? Do we have employees and non-employees? So for example, we have 10 teachers. Do they have to be district teachers? Because we have a lot of teachers who work here or who live here that work in other schools. And I certainly want our teachers to have a voice in this, but perhaps we can have people who have multiple hats join in. And again, I think it's not about representing specific organizations. I think it's representing bodies of thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we are at this time planning to include 10 members of the District 46 certified staff and 5 members of the District 46 support staff, so that our employees are helping to create this process. But that's not to say that we can't have a parent who is a teacher and is on the District 127 board and has a vested interest in being a part of our school district's strategic planning committee. So
yeah, and I think we can do multiple hats. I mean, some of the teachers, many teachers who are on staff also live here. And so if we can have them not chosen just because they're employed, but because they have multiple perspectives, then we've got I mean, we would never go into a store and ask, I don't know how to say this, our job as a board is to represent the taxpayers. So to have only 10 of them in the team would be challenging, I think, for us. And so if we can find teachers who are also residents, they've got the taxpayer and the teacher hat. And that opens it up further to, and it's just a question. There are lots of teachers and they might have other perspectives if they are not staff. And is that a perspective we want? And I don't know if we do or not.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So looking at this list right now, here are the groups that you've mentioned that may or may not be parents. Okay. So what, we don't know if they're going to be, so we have someone from a seniors organization, Arts Alliance, District 127 board, CLC, people who have left the district, PFLAG, District Grays Lake trustee, the Park District, and Special Rec. So that's 9 people. For all of those, and I except for those who have left the district, which isn't really a group that I can reach out to. All of the others are groups we can reach out to. So I'm going to call those 8 for the moment. So those 8, we'll have to reach directly into those groups. If the people who share interest and want to join us are not parents, and we're doing 15 community or staff members, community or parents, that leaves space for 7 parents. Is that a plan that we're comfortable with, or not? I as I move forward, invite people in.
I think is obvious, we could what if and slice and dice this group apart as much as, we want down to the minuscule. I think we just make a good faith effort to try and capture each and every type of demographic that you can think of is probably the best we're going to be able to do. Because, I think we all could come up with 20 different scenarios of who in this group, and to be able to keep the working group, as you want to call it, the working group into a manageable number to where we get good output. We need to just get it as diverse as possible and spread out the wealth as to who we actually get into it as best as possible.
Sounds like a plan to me. All right.
Dr. Glickman, quick point, and that is, having done this in several communities, you always want to step back and say, when we get done with this, we'll have credibility in your community, in all parts of your community. That's the most important thing. And so you want to make sure that you've got the political nature of this covered. So, I get that You have loud voices in the community, we all do. And so you've got to balance that so that they don't control the space too. But in the same regard, you've got to make sure that they're represented so that you get that product and that input from them. So that's important. And that's part of our jobs, again, as facilitators, is to work with Dr. Glickman and ask those questions to say, does it represent who you are as a community? Mm-hmm. Or bad, all of the above, because that's what you want as part of this. The only other question I would ask is, in many communities that I served, we had social agencies or social groups or clubs that were important. So I don't know if you've got representation like that. It was a Lions Club in the most recent district that I served.
We have the Exchange Club. I'm a member. So I'll be there, but yeah. Yeah, we have the Exchange Club. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was helpful. And is the board comfortable with the dates to move forward with these dates? Because I'll need to know, obviously people who are going to be joining us need to know the dates ahead of time so that they can commit to those dates. So are these dates they're all Wednesday nights? Sounds okay?
I was good with the dates.
Okay.
Good. Anybody else? Okay.
Not going anywhere.
None of us are.
So
looks like the dates are good.
Okay. So does anyone have any further questions for our three facilitators?
I just have one last one. Is it possible to have language translation packs? I know when I've gone to the bilingual parent summits, and I'm the one that doesn't speak the language sometimes in the breakout sessions, it's really helpful to have those packs so that I'm not having to pick out the different words in isolation. I'm wondering if we can provide that for our Spanish speaking or other language speaking participants.
I'm assuming you're talking about the final products. Is that what you're referring to? And them being in multiple languages?
No, I'm actually talking about the conversations so that while someone is, I know when I've hosted these things, it's nice to have either a physical translator or some sort of translation pack so again, at the bilingual parent conference, I had a pack. I put the headphones in, and then there's someone who's translating so that we don't miss out on have to bring to the process, in addition to having the outputs translated into Spanish.
Well, certainly as we do this inviting, we will be reaching into our Spanish-speaking community. And as you know, when we do surveys and such, we absolutely do that in Spanish as well. If, and Stephanie and I have been talking about how we very much would like to have members join in who are Spanish speakers. If that happens and that results in the need for interpretation, we will have to figure out how we're going to do that. We will figure that out.
I've got some ideas on that and some resources if you're interested in that.
Wonderful.
And as facilitators, we'd be more than glad to accommodate that in any way that we can, whether it's a different language or we've even done it with sign language, with somebody who's hard of hearing, interpret and whatever it takes to be able to allow people to communicate in the best way that they can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else we need to cover?
I don't think so. I think we're going to say thank you. The hour is late. So we're going to thank our three facilitators. Thank you for joining us. I'll be in touch with you in the next couple of days as we talk about how we move forward. All right. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Glickman. And again, we encourage you to reach out to us as we can be of support to you.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice seeing everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. All right, next on the unfinished business is the Assistant Superintendent for Finance hiring process.
And I'm going to hand that over to Mr. Wolk to talk about.
Yes, good evening. Wanted to give you some updates on our timeline and where we are in that search process. On November 16th, we posted the position on a variety of different websites so that we were able to distribute this out to applicants throughout the state, even out of state. So it's on our district website. It is on IASBO's website, which is the school business officials website. And then also a nationwide website, Teachers or K-12 Job Spotlight. As of right now, I looked earlier today, we have 7 candidates who have completed the application process and have received video interview invites. And we have several more individuals who have begun the process and are in the middle of that application, completing their application. So over winter break, and as they come through, Dr. Glickman, Mr. Lewis, Mrs. Whirling, and myself are reviewing the video interviews. It's a 4-question interview, and narrowing down our candidates that we'll bring in for our first round of interviews. And it will be with those same individuals, Dr. Glickman, Mr. Lewis, and Ms. Mary Whirling, and myself. That's going to take place the week of January 11th. So we're going to get back into things, make sure school's back up and running, and then the 11th, hit the ground running. The week of the 11th, trying to find our next assistant superintendent. During the week of the 18th, we are going to have a second round of quote unquote in-person interviews. We're not sure if they're going to actually be in person or virtual. We'll see where we're at. But we're going to include a couple different groups of individuals, including building and administration, some of our district office support staff, so those who will be working alongside or with the assistant superintendent, some of our union members, to so make sure that they have some input in this process as well. That brings us to the week of January 25th, and we are going to have our third round of quote unquote in-person interviews with a narrowed down group of individuals. That's going to be with cabinet, so our leadership team at the district level. Then on Wednesday, January 27th, we're proposing to bring to the board a closed session interview with the finalist 1 week prior to the February 10th. Wait, my dates are off. I'm sorry. That's actually going to be the week of the 1st. My dates are, I put that in the wrong spot. So the week of the 1st, that Wednesday, have a closed session meeting for you to meet with the finalist that we're wanting to we'll be moving forward with, and so you can have that final interview with them. And then
you were right the first time. You were right the first
I was
time.
right. Yeah, I was right the first time. Yeah.
We don't. Yeah. Well, we're looking at the last week in January to do that closed session interview, because then that gives us even more time.
Reference checks.
You're right.
And then everything with reference checks and salary negotiations, we will be announcing our assistant superintendent of finance at the February 10th board meeting. A long process, but if we want the best, that's what we need to go through. And we're excited to move forward. We have some very highly qualified candidates. Any questions?
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, okay. Okay, that is it for the unfinished business. New business, Board of Education email response norms. Christy Braden, sorry, you were going to talk about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to have that discussion. I think, especially when we were just having that influx of emails and people wanting to be heard around the school reopening plan, I think we found out through feedback that we received that there were some teachers who didn't feel that they had felt heard by the board, or that we had responded to their notes. And I think what happened is that each of us assumed, like, Dr. Glickman was great in responding to stuff that came her way, and then there were some things that she wasn't included on. And so I was going by the norm of the board president will respond, maybe making the assumption that, Jim, you were going to include it on that email. Sometimes we all got emails separately, but it was clear that we probably had all gotten the email. So I just wanted to, number one, just make sure that we all know what the norm is and understand it, so that, we can, if we do reach out, that we feel comfortable reaching out, or if we hold back, that we feel comfortable that it'll get addressed. And then I guess the second part of that for me would be, I do think I would like to go back and, to the extent that we can, clean that up a little bit and make sure that if there are specific people that have not been responded to, that, we do what we have to do to make that right with them, just by responding with, getting back to them to let them know that we had this conversation, and, that it was certainly not intentional on our part, but I would not want to let that feedback linger out there without addressing it as a board. So, just to start with, I guess, what's the right way for us to understand when to respond as individual board members to emails that we get, and when to kind of direct that to the president to respond on behalf of the board.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts? I'll be happy to listen.
Hi, Mr. Weedman. I'll pipe in first here. So, one, thank you, Ms. Braden, for bringing this topic forward, because we know that we've received a tremendous amount of community stakeholder feedback. And to your point, Dr. Glickman was phenomenal in triaging and responding to the best of her ability. But I do think that we need to have a more succinct process and guidance to make sure that none of our community members, especially our teachers, feel left out or unheard in all this. For what it's worth, I'd just like to say personally that while each and every board member may not have responded directly, that your message was heard. And it was factored into our thought processes and decision making as we deliberated the hybrid plan, the timeline, and such. So please know that that wasn't lost on us. In terms of my personal experience, when I've sat on other boards or have been involved in other organizations, the president tends to be the voice of that body, responding on behalf of that body, unless directed otherwise. So that's what my experience has been, and that's what I would be in support of, unless Mr. Weedman or some of the other board members feel differently. Thank you.
Well, for me, I think there's probably a couple of categories there where, I don't want to stop anybody from feeling as if they cannot respond back to anybody, one email that you might get, or multiple emails that you might get. There's no reason why anybody can't individually respond back. The trick to that is to make sure that it's a response back from you and not as the board, speaking for the board. And usually, a lot of times, even if I look at sending an email, I try and make sure that it's not my opinion, but it's the board's stance. So if you're going to respond back to them, there's kind of that division point where we got to make sure that you or I, maybe not necessarily, if you want to put the president, I guess if you're going to put not the onus, but the responsibility to respond as the board's voice on me, then, or on the president, I shouldn't say just on me, on the president, then we just have to make sure that we're all on the same page, what we're going to be able to say as well. You know, I try and parse words very carefully when I'm sending an email for the district. Make sure that my responses are not necessarily my view, but the board's stance. And sometimes that gets really hard, to be honest with you. You know, if we missed some emails and responses, I guess that falls to me. I thought we were covering the majority of them, as Lynn was, or Dr. Glickman was sending out massive emails every day. So I guess I assumed the majority of them had gotten, or most of them had been covered. If we missed some, then we missed some. But we had kind of had Lynn run point, or Dr. Glickman run point on that for us. So it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. If you want to, I mean, personally, I think I don't want to stop any one board member from saying they want to respond with their own opinion. You know.
Sure.
So if you respond with your own opinion, then make sure that's kind of explicit, and it's not speaking on behalf of the board.
Yeah, I understand that, Mr. Weedman, and thank you. And maybe just for additional color commentary, if you will, you know, there were several messages that I received directly from teachers that I have relationships with, right? That it was definitely directed towards me based on our individual one-to-one relationship. But then there were others that I think were more broadly, where you could just tell that it was like copy paste, just change the who it was going to type emails. So yeah, for those that, you know, if I got something from a teacher that I have a personal relationship, ongoing relationship with, yeah, I totally responded individually. So those aren't waiting in the whim. I think it was those that you could just tell this was a mass communication, either with all of us in the two, or if it was individually pointed to me. But then you could just tell it's like a cookie cutter communication. I think, you know, maybe even on a few, right? We kind of learned quickly that we all had gotten the same email. So just to clarify that.
And I did also want to clarify that anytime there's a message that goes to the whole board and to me, unless you tell me otherwise, I'll continue to respond on behalf of the board. Certainly if I feel comfortable doing so, if I know, you know, if we've had conversations about these topics, and I'll put them live. So I think this is about when I haven't been copied in on a message, and therefore wouldn't even know it had come.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Miller.
And I'm just curious, does the norm include, I think generally if we are communicating with a school employee, our norm is to copy Dr. Glickman on it. So does that norm continue in this situation too? If someone reaches out to us personally, as we're all friends with teachers and our neighbors with teachers, and they reach out to us personally, are we then going to abide by the norm of copying Dr. Glickman on our response? That tripped me up a few times. So curious about that too.
Dr. Glickman, you have a thought on that?
I'm thinking about that. I am thinking about that.
Correct. Because that could be a touchy subject.
That really can be.
For me, I don't mean to interrupt, Dr. Glickman, but for me, it comes down to, you know, continuing to reaffirm and recognize our role as a governing body, and not a, for lack of a better word, organizational body, right? For me, it's, I too have the same thing. You know, I have many people in the community that I'm friends with who will come to me and ask me things, and most of the time I will remind them that I likely am going to refer them to the superintendent, because my role is to not be down deep in those, in those types of things that are organizationally important. And it's that balcony dance floor, thing. I think what's helpful for me in this conversation is if we see an email or a communication that does not have Dr. Glickman copied on it, that the board president, whoever is serving in that role, is able to reach out and poll the board for their opinions in terms of that communication. So some more contact in the in-between times, within respecting, of course, OMA and all that kind of stuff, to be able to understand how the response would go out. That way it genuinely is a full board response. So just more of a regular communication between whoever's serving as the board president and how that person reaches out to the other board members to craft that response. And that would be helpful to the board president too, because then you'd have all those opinions in terms of drafting the response. So I generally, as a board member, what I generally do is I take in all the information that is told to me, and I reaffirm that I am going to refer that to either my fellow board members as a discussion topic, or I'm going to refer you to the superintendent, because that's my role. My role is not to question or, do what differently what Dr. Glickman is doing.
And I would just add, I think there's an element of, even in a lot of cases, and I think Dr. Glickman does this really well, of being empathetic and not even, I don't know that folks necessarily need a stance in emails versus thank you. Thank you for sharing what you shared. We have received it, and it is input into everything that's happening.
And we're listening.
Yeah, exactly. And Jim, what I hear you saying is that you feel if we get one, and even if it sounds like it might be going to the whole board, if our response is going to be as an individual board member, thank you for sending that. It's, we appreciate you reaching out and have, to Mika's point, that we have, that it's all going in, it's all coming in as input, and we're taking it all into consideration. Being empowered to do that part, I think, is what I'm hearing. And then on pieces where someone needs a problem solved, or, that is where, of course, we're going to involve the district leadership, because they're the problem solvers, not us. And if it is something that requires a board stance, that we're leaning on Jim to, or whoever is serving in that role to, to gather that stance and be the conveyor of that stance. But I think in a lot of the situations that I'm recalling, and I have not gone back, I've had it on my list to go back and actually look at some of the emails and kind of parse out maybe what we need to do. And I haven't, but my recollection of it is more the thank you, we heard you, appreciate you expressing your concern, or whatever, your voice, whatever that is, or support. So I to me, what I'm hearing is that Jim, you're saying we are empowered to kind of acknowledge, and then if there's a situation, to Stephen's point, where there's a decision that needs to be made or a problem that needs to be solved, then, Dr. Glickman and Jim are kind of our spokespeople.
I'm more comfortable with you guys being able to respond back in that type of not capacity, but in that type of way where, let them know you got the message, you hear the message, you're taking the input,
Awesome. Okay.
I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. Some days there's not enough time in the day to answer all the emails. So.
Right. Of course. Yeah. That's extremely helpful to me. And I feel like now I can go back and just on a personal level, just go back and address some of them that I feel, had I known that, or had I clarified that earlier, that I absolutely would have responded to. So thank you for that.
I like that distinction you made between the kinds of emails where people need an acknowledgement that we've heard, we've received, and the kind that needs an output of a position. So, being empowered to respond to those kinds of emails, the first kind, is good to know. But in the absence of that, I was going to say, maybe like a Supreme Court justice, Jim could assign opinions to different people. But because I'm thinking in terms of, the emails we got where we all got the same email, but it was under separate, we all got them individually. That if they got 7 of those, thank you for your, your input, maybe that wouldn't be so great. But maybe it would be.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think that would be why I would have done, I've done that. I've sent the same email to multiple people because, if I heard back from all three of them, I think that's why I would have sent it,
Yeah.
Okay. Any other?
We have agreement, right?
It sounds like it.
So can someone just summarize what did we just agree to? Just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Now you want a summary. Okay. So I guess we kind of split them into two categories, right? Those that need a simple response of, somewhere along the lines of I got your email. Thank you for the information. We're looking into it, or something along those lines. But anything that needs a problem solved or decision made or a policy explained or something like that, then that gets pushed to Dr. Glickman and the board president, whoever that person may be in the future.
And are we copying Dr. Glickman on every response from every teacher, or can we circle back to that? What's your feeling on that, Dr. Glickman?
That I'd love to circle.
Okay. I think she wants to think about that.
I really do want to think about that. Yeah, I really do. I really appreciate the question greatly. And maybe we can just do a brief conversation about this again at the next meeting, because I want to think about that question. I really appreciate it.
It's a tough spot to be in, because then
it is.
Will the teacher feel comfortable sending you an email if it's something that's more personal and you send to Dr. Glickman?
Yeah.
So there's that fine line of making sure that we don't fall into a big trap.
Yeah. So honestly, that is because that's what's on my mind. And so I think it really might be content sensitive in that way.
Right.
And if it is just if it's someone reaching out to you about the function of the district and decisions that are being made, it would make sense that you would respond and copy me in. That would make sense to me. If it is somebody reaching out to you, maybe because they have a personal relationship with you and want to discuss something with you, that feels a little bit different.
And to me, my boundary was just, sorry, go ahead. What?
No, I just said that's what I'm thinking about at the moment.
And I'm wondering too if it's the mechanism that they use. If it comes to my personal email, then I'm going to assume that that's a personal conversation that I'm not going to copy you on, so long as the expectation is that if someone in the district sends me an email through my district email, that now is going to be copied, the response, you'll be copied on it. And so I don't know if that's the right filter, but that's the filter I used.
Yeah, no. The default you would copy me.
Okay. Thank you.
I do want to think about this a little more. So if there's more to say, we'll say it in the future. Okay. Okay.
All right. Next on our new business is the Illinois Association of School Administrators School for Advanced Leadership, ISAL, for Dr. Glickman to apply. She had approached or talked to me and Stephen in one of our agenda setting meetings about this as a professional development. I didn't feel comfortable saying, yes, go ahead as speaking for the board. I fully support her doing it. But I wanted to make sure that we had board input on this process, and Dr. Glickman will explain it a little bit more too.
Yeah, certainly. So this is a wonderful professional development opportunity that I have been hearing about, frankly, for 10 years. And you've heard about ISIL before because your former superintendent, Ellen Carell, participated in it. And they have graduated, I think it's 127 superintendents out of this program over the past 10 years. It's run by my professional organization, so it's targeted professional development. It runs over eight weekends, I believe it is, over an 18-month period. So actually, at the moment, they're hoping to be able to begin it in April in person. We'll see if that really happens or not downstate. And every participant is partnered with a coach who then and creates a professional growth plan with that coach, checks in with that coach throughout, in between sessions to work on a project. There are the cohort group is aligned to the leadership standards, and there are many speakers who are brought in, and all of the superintendents that I've ever spoken to about this just cannot stop talking about how life-changing it is. The cost is minimal when you consider that it's 16 days of professional development plus a coach in between. The cost is $5,500, again, spread over 2 years' time. So that would be something I would be able to fit into my superintendent's budget. And I'm coming to ask you about it really for two reasons. One, because it does require me to apply. And I have no idea how many people will apply this year and whether they have space for me. So this is my interest in applying, but also the school board president has to write a letter of support. And because it would bring me away, I believe it's Fridays and Saturdays. So the Saturdays are on me, but the Fridays are district time. It's professional development time that would take me out of the district. And because there are 8 of those over 18 months, I want to make sure you're comfortable with that as well. So that's it.
Certainly comfortable with it.
Absolutely. Enjoy.
Yeah. Make the investment in yourself.
Absolutely.
And we get the return on that investment, right, Mrs. Brady?
Right. You know it.
That's the plan. All right. Well, thank you. I need to apply by February 5th. So, Mr. Weedman, if you can get working on that, I'd be grateful because I'd love to be able to get the application in soon after winter break if possible.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's that.
All right. We are up to topics for future agenda.
Oh my goodness. Well, actually, after this very robust meeting, we don't have a ton of topics for the next one. So, it would certainly seem likely that we will be talking about our return, our hybrid plan at that point. By then, we will certainly have a good indication as to whether we'll be able to return students on site and enact our hybrid learning program the last week in January. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that. We'll have some preliminary staffing plan information for the 21-22 school year. We'll have some type of an update regarding access. We're awaiting some information from the state. And we may be talking about student fees. I'm not sure about that yet. We have to do a little bit of background work on that. If we don't bring that to you in January, it'll be in February. And then, speaking of February, in February, we'll be bringing you a draft of the 21-22 calendar. So, any other topics that's on anybody's mind that you're hoping we'll be bringing forth sometime in the future? Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Can you give us an update on what the stakeholder composition will be for the strategic planning? Can you give us an update at the next meeting? Just tell us.
We just,
who is it?
Yes, absolutely.
And are you looking for names for people you may not know outside the parent community, or are you confident? Are you comfortable with the information that you have?
No, I know if you have names to share with me, I'd love that, but share them with me first. That'll be great. But ultimately, there will be this Google form. You'll have access to it, and so I would ask you to then direct people to that form to complete it. But then I'd love it that if you sent me a name to say, hey, this is someone who might be a great stakeholder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. Yes, I added strategic planning to next time. Sure. All right. Anything else?
Doesn't look like it. All right, Mr. Wolk, we're up to you for public comments.
Yes, thank you. We have one public comment that is from Ashley Mahoney. Ms. Mahoney writes, I would like to just ask why we are pushing back the start date yet again. We are watching other districts with higher community numbers positivity go back to school because they are following the science and research that shows this isn't spread in schools. Please remember that when I brought this up before, it was about choice. Some of us are watching our children suffer either emotionally or mentally or emotionally and fall behind academically. There are many families that still want their kids in school, and it should be about choice. You're taking all choice away from us families, and our children are suffering. For those that aren't suffering or are afraid, they are able to continue remote. But those of us that need more are not given the opportunity. Please stop surrendering to the fear of some and the loud voices of the teachers and the union that are afraid their job is going to be too hard in person. What job isn't hard in the pandemic? It's time to go back to school. Actually, another one just came in as well. Amy McCluster writes, would love to understand our return to school plan. What is our failure rate as a district? And those are the public comments.
Okay, thank you. Next is I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.
Okay. We will see you all in closed session.